The Tell-Tale Heart by Edgar Allan Poe. True, nervous. Very, very nervous I had been and I am. But why will you say that I am mad? Listen and observe how calmly I can tell you the whole story. It is impossible to say how first the idea entered my brain, but it haunted me day and night. I loved the old man. I didn't want his money, his gold. I think it was his eye. Yes, he had the eye of a vulture, a pale blue eye with film over it, and whenever it fell upon me, it made me feel nervous. So gradually I made up my mind to kill the old man. And every night, about midnight, I entered his room with a lamp. I moved slowly so as not to disturb his sleep. And I did this for 7 long nights. The eye was always closed, and so it was impossible to do the work. And every morning I went into the bedroom, spoke to him, asking how he had spent the night. So he could have never suspected that every night I looked in upon him while he was sleeping. On the 8th night I was very cautious in opening the door, but that night he heard me and he cried, "Who's there?" I said nothing. I didn't move a muscle for a whole hour, while he was still sitting up in the bed listening. I knew the old man's fears had been growing upon him since he had perceived my presence in the room. Then a simple dim ray fell full upon the vulture eye. It was open wide, wide open, and I was furious. And there came to my ears a low, dull, quick sound. I knew that sound well. It was the beating of the old man's heart. The old man's hour had come. He cried once. In an instant I dragged him to the floor and pulled the heavy bed over him. The old man was dead. His eye would trouble me no more. During the night I worked hard to conceal the body. First of all I dismembered the corpse. I then took up 3 planks from the floor of the chamber and hid the corpse beneath them. When I ended it was 4 o'clock, but suddenly there came a knocking at the street door. I went down to open it with a light heart, for what had I now to fear? There entered 3 men, who introduced themselves as officers of the police. A cry had been heard by the neighbor during the night. The officers had been asked to investigate. I smiled, for what had I to fear? The cry, I said, was my own in a dream. The old man I mentioned was absent in the country. I brought chairs into the room and asked them to rest from their fatigues, while I myself placed my own seat upon the very spot where the victim was. The officers sat, they chatted of familiar things, but before long I felt myself getting pale. My head ached, and I heard a ringing in my ears. No doubt I grew very pale, but I talked in a loud voice. Yet the sound increased, and what could I do? Still the man chatted pleasantly and smiled. Was it possible that they heard not? O Almighty God! They heard, they suspected, they knew. They were making fun of me. But anything was better than this agony. "Villains!" I cried. I admit the deed. Tear up the planks here. It is the beating of his hideous heart.